Silence. It sounds peaceful, right? But for many people, silence doesn't feel calm at all. It feels heavy. It feels like a warning. It feels like something is wrong, even if nothing actually is. The room is quiet, your phone isn't buzzing, nobody is talking, and suddenly your heart starts racing. You replay conversations, you analyze every look, you wonder if someone is upset with you. You feel that familiar discomfort rising, like the silence itself is judging you. If you've ever felt this, you're not alone, and you're not broken. There is a reason your mind reacts this way. Silence exposes something you spend your whole life trying to avoid. Your own fear of being unworthy, invisible, or forgotten. From the outside, silence is just silence. But inside, silence becomes a canvas where your brain paints its worst possibilities. When you don't hear a reply, your mind fills the gap. And the mind rarely fills silence with kindness. Instead, it fills it with fear. Did I do something wrong? Are they losing interest? Am I annoying? The silence becomes proof of your deepest insecurities. The truth is, silence isn't scary because nothing is happening. Silence is scary because your mind thinks something bad must be happening. You were trained to fear the loss of connection, and when that connection goes quiet, the alarm rings. Many people grow up in environments where silence wasn't safe. Maybe you learned early that when people go silent, punishment comes next. So you learn to scan every pause. You learn to anticipate the storm instead of enjoying the calm. Silence wasn't peace. Silence was danger. Even now, as an adult, that old lesson lives inside your body. The conversation stops, and suddenly your nervous system prepares for heartbreak. Not because the present is threatening, but because your past taught you to expect abandonment. If you have anxious attachment, silence feels like emotional starvation. Your brain interprets silence as a loss of connection, even if the other person is just busy, sleeping, or focused on their own world. You don't need a reason to panic. The absence of reassurance is enough. You don't think, they'll reply later. You think, they're pulling away. I'm losing them, again. And when the silence stretches longer, the fear gets louder. That fear isn't dramatic, it's survival. Your inner child learned that silence could mean danger, rejection of who you are. So today, your adult self keeps reacting to silence like it's life or death. But here's something nobody tells you. Silence does not create anxiety. Silence reveals the anxiety that's already inside you. Your insecurities stay blurry in the background, but when silence arrives, there's nowhere to run. The thoughts you've buried finally surface. Silence forces you to face yourself, your fears, your beliefs, your wounds. And that can feel overwhelming. Because deep down, you worry that if people stop talking to you, they realize you're not worth staying for. Some people were taught that their value depends on being useful, entertaining, pleasing. So when you're not actively contributing, when you're not giving someone attention, comfort, or validation, silence makes you feel like you're failing at being enough. Silence becomes a test. Will they still want me if I'm not doing anything? If the answer isn't instantly visible, anxiety takes over. You refresh messages, you overthink your last words. You rewrite memories to find a mistake. And the more you search, the more flaws you think you find. Silence gives no feedback, so your mind invents its own, and it's rarely kind. There is another layer. When communication pauses, the imagination runs wild. Anxiety is a storyteller, and it always writes tragedies. It looks at a pause and creates endings. It looks at a delay and imagines betrayal. You think you're preparing yourself for the worst, but really you're hurting yourself first, just in case someone else might hurt you later. Silence becomes self-protection through self-punishment. You rehearse heartbreak to avoid feeling blindsided by it. But instead of protecting you, it just keeps you living in fear. Sometimes, silence feels anxious because you don't trust others to care, but more often, it's because you don't trust yourself. You don't trust that you're likable enough, interesting enough, lovable enough. So when people disappear for a moment, your brain tells you they're disappearing forever. You think their silence reflects your worth. You think quiet means rejection. But their silence is not about you. People carry their own worlds, their stress, their focus, their priorities. Yet anxious thoughts always interpret the world as a threat. And here is the honest part you might not want to hear. Silence feels uncomfortable when you don't feel comfortable with yourself. If your inner voice is harsh, silence feels like being trapped alone with the enemy. When everything goes quiet, you hear that voice clearer. You're not enough. They don't care. You're replaceable. And, of course, silence feels dangerous if the only voice left is one that hurts you. But silence also holds a hidden invitation, one that you've never been taught to accept. Silence is the space where healing begins. When no one is texting, when nobody is filling your emptiness from the outside, you get a chance to fill it from the inside. Silence can be a mirror, showing you the parts of yourself that need attention, love, and safety. You don't have to run. You can learn to stay. You can learn to listen, not to fear, but to understand the truth beneath it. Start by noticing what silence says to you. What story does your anxiety tell when you hear nothing? Does it jump to abandonment? To shame? To fear of being unwanted? Those thoughts are not random, they are memories speaking. They are the unfinished chapters of relationships that hurt you. You heal silence by answering that question. Yes, we are safe. You can practice emotional safety by giving yourself reassurance instead of demanding it from others. When you feel that anxious urgency, breathe and tell yourself, they don't have to respond immediately for me to be loved. It may feel unnatural at first because your nervous system is rewriting history, but each repetition is building a new truth. One where silence is not abandonment, but simply silence. You deserve relationships where silence isn't punishment. Where you can exist quietly and still feel loved. Where the calm between conversations is just as safe as the laughter. But that safety begins with you. When you start seeing silence as neutral, not threatening, you stop assuming the worst. You stop clinging, you stop panicking. You allow others to be separate, without feeling like their distance is a danger to you. Someday, you will sit in silence and it will feel like home. You will not chase responses. You will not measure your value through notifications. You will breathe in the quiet and feel presence instead of fear. That day doesn't come from finding someone who never goes silent. It comes from becoming someone who doesn't collapse when they do. The silence will no longer expose your wounds, it will show your strength. Here's the truth. Silence isn't the enemy. Silence is the teacher. And it gives you the chance to answer those whispers with courage. The more you learn to stay with yourself in the quiet, the more deeply you'll understand this.